The first shot split the quiet afternoon like thunder, sending dust scattering from the weathered sign above Lucy Ann's general store. Beatrice Armstrong flinched, but didn't stop scrubbing the wooden porch that had seen better days, just like the small mining town of Silver Creek, Colorado. It was 1876, and the promise of silver had faded almost as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind those too stubborn or too poor to leave. "Get down, girl," Mrs. Lucy Ann hissed from the doorway, her gray hair escaping its tight bun. "Those fools are at it again." Beatrice sighed, her calloused hands gripping the worn brush tighter. At 22, she'd grown accustomed to the occasional gunfights that erupted between drunken cowboys and miners. "Just finishing this corner, Mrs. Ann," she replied, determined to complete her task before seeking shelter. More shots rang out, followed by raucous laughter. Beatrice glanced up to see a group of men stumbling out of the Rusty Nail saloon across the street. They were the usual troublemakers, wealthy ranchers' sons who came to town for entertainment at the expense of others. "Look at that," one of them called out, pointing in her direction. "The Armstrong girl still scrubbing floors to earn her keep." Beatrice kept her head down, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Since her father's death in the mine collapse 3 years ago, she'd taken whatever work she could find to support herself and her ailing mother. "Hey, Armstrong," another voice shouted. "My pa's looking for a new maid, says he'd consider you if you weren't so dirty." Laughter erupted among the group as they approached the general store. Beatrice stood, wiping her hands on her faded apron. She'd endured worse taunts, but it never got easier. The leader of the group, Howard Caldwell, heir to the largest cattle ranch in the territory, swaggered up the steps. His expensive boots gleamed in the afternoon sun, a stark contrast to Beatrice's patched dress and worn shoes. "Don't you have somewhere else to be?" Mrs. Ann challenged, stepping onto the porch. Though well into her 60s, the shopkeeper still had the fire of her younger days. "Just having a friendly chat with Miss Armstrong," Howard replied with a smirk that suggested anything but friendliness. "Thought she might want to join us for a drink." "I'm working," Beatrice said simply, gathering her cleaning supplies. Howard's smile faltered. "Too good for our company." "That's rich, coming from someone who can barely afford to eat." "Leave her be," Mrs. Ann warned. "Or what?" Howard laughed, turning to his companions. "She's too poor to matter to anyone in this town, aren't you, Armstrong? Just another burden on Silver Creek's charity." The words stung like a physical blow. Beatrice gripped the porch railing, ready to defend herself when another voice cut through the tension. "Then she matters most of all." The deep, unfamiliar voice drew everyone's attention to the man who had appeared seemingly from nowhere. He stood at the bottom of the steps, tall and imposing in dust-covered riding clothes. His face was partially obscured by a well-worn hat, but Beatrice could see the intensity in his eyes as they fixed on Howard. "Who the hell are you?" Howard demanded, his hand hovering near the pistol at his hip. "Quinn Sullivan," the stranger replied evenly. "Just rode into town and already finding the welcome less than hospitable." Beatrice studied the newcomer. He stood with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to danger, his stance relaxed yet alert. Unlike the flashy pistols carried by Howard and his friends, Quinn's weapon remained holstered, though Beatrice sensed he could draw it in the blink of an eye if necessary. "This doesn't concern you, stranger," Howard said, his voice edged with uncertainty. Quinn took a step forward. "When I see men harassing a lady, it becomes my concern." The tension stretched like a bowstring pulled too tight. Howard's companions shifted uncomfortably, no longer finding the situation amusing. Finally, Howard backed away. "Come on, boys, let's leave these fine folks to their sweeping." He cast a final, contemptuous glance at Beatrice before leading his group back toward the saloon. As they departed, Beatrice released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said to the stranger, "but I could have handled them." Quinn Sullivan's mouth curved into a slight smile. "I believe you could have," he agreed, removing his hat to reveal dark hair streaked with trail dust. "But sometimes it helps to have someone else step in." Mrs. Ann approached, eyeing the newcomer with cautious approval. "You new to Silver Creek, Mr. Sullivan?" "Just arrived," he confirmed. "Looking for work and a place to stay." "What kind of work?" Beatrice asked, curiosity getting the better of her. "I've been a cowhand, tracker, and occasionally hired gun," he answered honestly. "But I'm hoping for something more, Settled, Mrs. Ann snorted. Not much settling to be done in Silver Creek these days. The mines are dying and the Caldwell family owns most everything else. Quinn nodded thoughtfully. I heard there might be ranch work available outside town. The Double Bar might be hiring, Beatrice suggested. Mr. Jenkins lost some hands to the railroad last month. Much obliged for the information, miss. Armstrong, Beatrice Armstrong, she supplied, surprised by the flutter in her stomach when their eyes met. Miss Armstrong, he repeated with a slight bow that seemed somehow genuine rather than mocking. Perhaps you could point me toward the Double Bar. Before Beatrice could respond, a commotion at the end of the street drew their attention. A wagon had overturned, spilling supplies across the dusty road. The driver was frantically trying to control his panicked horses. Excuse me, Quinn said, already moving toward the accident. Beatrice watched as he effortlessly calmed the horses, then helped the driver right the wagon and reload his goods. Mrs. Ann chuckled beside her. Well, he's handy, I'll give him that, he seems. Different, Beatrice admitted, unable to take her eyes off the stranger as he worked. Different could be good or bad in these parts, Mrs. Ann cautioned. Don't be taken in by a handsome face and a few kind words, girl. I'm not, Beatrice protested, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. After helping the wagon driver, Quinn returned to the general store, his expression serious. The man says there's a storm coming in from the mountains, might be a bad one. Mrs. Ann glanced at the clear blue sky. Doesn't look like it. I've learned to trust mountain weather warnings, Quinn replied. May I help you secure anything before it hits? The older woman hesitated before nodding. There are some crates in the back that need moving inside. Beatrice can show you. As Beatrice led Quinn behind the store, she found herself suddenly nervous. She'd never been affected this way by a man before, especially not one she'd just met. How long have you worked for Mrs. Ann? Quinn asked as they approached the stack of crates. 3 years, Beatrice replied. Since my father died. Quinn nodded, lifting a heavy crate with ease. And your mother, ill. The mine dust got into his lungs and then hers too from washing his clothes all those years. Beatrice picked up a smaller box. The doctor says she doesn't have long. Quinn's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. It's life, Beatrice said with forced lightness. At least in Silver Creek. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, moving supplies into the store's back room. When they finished, Quinn dusted off his hands and looked at her directly. Those men, Howard and his friends, do they bother you often? Beatrice shrugged. They bother anyone they consider beneath them, which is most of the town, and no one stands up to them. Their families own the land, the cattle, and most of the businesses. Beatrice sighed. Standing up to them means losing your livelihood. Quinn's jaw tightened. That's not right. It's the way of things, Beatrice replied, though she admired his indignation on her behalf. Before Quinn could respond, the sky darkened suddenly, as if a curtain had been drawn across the sun. A cold wind whipped down the street, sending dust devils spinning. Storm's coming faster than I thought, Quinn observed. You should get home before it hits. Beatrice glanced worriedly at the sky. I need to check on my mother first. She'll be frightened by the storm. I'll walk with you, Quinn offered, his tone suggesting it wasn't open for debate. Beatrice hesitated, then nodded. She quickly informed Mrs. Ann of her departure and led Quinn through the increasingly gusty streets toward a small, weathered cabin at the edge of town. Inside, Beatrice's mother lay propped up on a narrow bed, her once beautiful face now gaunt and pale. She startled at their entrance, relaxing only when she recognized her daughter. Beatrice, who is this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she eyed Quinn warily. This is Mr. Sullivan, Mother. He's new in town and helped me at the store today. Beatrice moved to adjust her mother's blankets. There's a storm coming, so I wanted to make sure you were comfortable. Quinn removed his hat respectfully. Madam, it's a pleasure to meet you. Beatrice's mother studied him with surprising sharpness. You're not from around here? No, madam. Been traveling a while. Running from something or toward something? She asked bluntly. Quinn smiled slightly. A bit of both, I expect. This honest answer seemed to satisfy her. Well, at least you don't lie. That's something. The first drops of rain began to pelt the roof as Beatrice stoked the small fire in the hearth. The wind howled around the cabin's corners, finding every crack and crevice in the aging structure. This roof won't hold in a heavy rain, Quinn observed, glancing up at the already forming water stains on the ceiling. It's managed so far, Beatrice said defensively, embarrassed by their humble conditions. Quinn didn't press the issue, but when the rain intensified minutes later, he removed his coat and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Beatrice asked in alarm, to check the roof. "You have any extra canvas or oilcloth?" Beatrice pointed to a corner where a folded piece of canvas lay. "We use it when the leaks get bad," but Quinn was already out the door, canvas in hand. Through the window, Beatrice watched in astonishment as he climbed onto the low roof despite the pouring rain. For the next 20 minutes, he worked to secure the canvas over the worst sections, minimizing the leaks that had plagued them during previous storms. When he finally came back inside, he was drenched to the skin, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. "That should hold for now," he said, water pooling around his boots. Beatrice stared at him, speechless at his kindness to strangers. She quickly gathered their meager supply of dry towels and handed them to him. "You'll catch your death," she scolded gently. "The fire's not much, but stand near it to dry off." As Quinn dried himself by the small fire, Beatrice's mother beckoned him closer. "Why would you do that for people you don't know?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Quinn considered the question seriously. "My father taught me that a man's worth isn't measured by what he has, but by what he gives when there's nothing to gain." "Wise man, your father," she replied, settling back against her pillows. "He was," Quinn agreed, a shadow passing over his features, "before he died." The storm raged throughout the evening, but the patched roof held. Quinn insisted on staying to make sure they were safe, repairing a broken shutter and reinforcing the door against the wind. When the worst had passed, Beatrice offered him the only food they had, a simple stew that barely filled 3 bowls. "I should be going," Quinn said after the meal, though the rain still fell steadily outside. "Where will you stay?" Beatrice asked, concerned. "I saw a livery stable when I rode in." "The owner might let me bed down there," Beatrice's mother spoke up unexpectedly. "Nonsense, it's still pouring and you've helped us when you didn't have to. The least we can offer is shelter for the night." Quinn looked to Beatrice, clearly not wanting to impose. She nodded her agreement, though she wasn't sure where he would sleep in their tiny cabin. "I can make a pallet by the fire," she offered. "I'll take the floor," Quinn insisted. "I've slept on worse." As Beatrice prepared the makeshift bed, she couldn't help but wonder about this stranger who had defended her honor, fixed their roof, and declined even the small comfort of a pallet in favor of their well-being. Men like Quinn Sullivan didn't often come to dying towns like Silver Creek, and they certainly didn't concern themselves with poor women like her. Yet here he was, arranging his saddle bags as a pillow on their rough wooden floor, seemingly content despite the humble surroundings. "Why did you really come to Silver Creek?" Beatrice asked quietly after her mother had drifted to sleep. Quinn was silent for so long that Beatrice thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I was tracking someone. A man who killed my partner during a cattle drive near the Wyoming border." Beatrice felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "Did you find him?" "I followed his trail to Silver Creek, but it went cold here." Quinn stared into the dying fire. "I thought he might be working for one of the ranches, but I haven't been able to confirm it." "What will you do if you find him?" Quinn's expression hardened. "Bring him to justice if I can. My partner deserves that much. And if you can't," his eyes met hers in the firelight, "then I'll have to find a way to make peace with that." Beatrice nodded, understanding that sometimes justice remained elusive, especially for people without power or influence. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she said quietly. "Most men wouldn't." "Most men haven't seen what happens when lies take root," Quinn replied. His gaze lingered on her face for a moment before he added, "Get some rest, Miss Armstrong. Tomorrow will come soon enough." The rain had stopped by morning, though dark clouds still threatened on the horizon. Beatrice woke to find Quinn already up, having rekindled the fire and repaired a broken chair they'd been meaning to fix for months. "You didn't have to do that," she said, embarrassed again by their poverty. "I like working with my hands," Quinn replied simply. "Helps me think." After a breakfast of cornmeal mush, all they had left in the house, Quinn prepared to leave. "I'll head out to the Double Bar Ranch today, see about that work." Beatrice nodded, surprised by the disappointment she felt at his departure. "It's about 5 miles west of town." Mr. Jenkins is fair if a bit gruff. I appreciate the recommendation. Quinn hesitated, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a few coins. For the hospitality, he explained, holding them out. Beatrice immediately stepped back. We don't need charity, Mr. Sullivan. Quinn regarded her steadily. It's not charity to pay for a warm meal and dry place to sleep, Miss Armstrong. It's the decent thing to do. Seeing her continued reluctance, he placed the coins on the table. For your mother's medicine, then. Before Beatrice could protest further, Quinn tipped his hat and headed for the door. I'll likely be in town again soon. Perhaps I'll stop by to check on that roof. After he left, Beatrice's mother spoke from her bed. That's a good man, Beatrice. Not many left like him. Beatrice picked up the coins, conflicted. The money would indeed buy medicine that could ease her mother's pain, but accepting it felt like admitting Howard was right that she was just another charity case. I don't know if we'll see him again, she said, tucking the coins away. Her mother's knowing smile suggested she thought otherwise. Over the next 2 weeks, Beatrice tried to put Quinn Sullivan out of her mind. She continued her work at the general store, tended to her mother, and avoided Howard Caldwell and his friends as much as possible. Life in Silver Creek returned to its usual rhythm, the excitement of the newcomer fading like the storm clouds. Then one Saturday afternoon, as Beatrice was carrying home supplies from the general store, a familiar figure on horseback appeared on the road ahead. Quinn Sullivan looked different, cleaner, his clothes less trail-worn, his face freshly shaved. But the quiet confidence in his bearing remained unchanged. Miss Armstrong, he greeted her, dismounting. May I help you with those packages? Beatrice couldn't suppress her smile. Mr. Sullivan. I heard you found work at the Double Bar. I did, he confirmed, taking the heaviest bundles from her arms despite her half-hearted protests. Mr. Jenkins had need of someone who could handle both cattle and a gun. They walked side by side toward her cabin, Quinn adjusting his long stride to match her shorter one. How is your mother? He asked. Better, actually. The medicine helped. Beatrice glanced at him. Thank you for that. Quinn nodded, accepting her gratitude without comment, the roof holding up. It hasn't rained since that night, but it seems solid, she replied. You did good work. When they reached the cabin, Beatrice invited him inside. Her mother was sitting up in a chair by the window, looking stronger than she had in weeks. The cowboy returns, she observed with a hint of amusement. Beatrice said you'd found work at the Double Bar. Yes, madam, Quinn confirmed, setting down the packages. Mr. Jenkins is a fair employer, and how long do you plan to stay in our little town? She asked pointedly. Quinn glanced at Beatrice before answering. I'm not certain yet, depends on a few things. Like finding the man you're tracking, Beatrice asked quietly. Her mother raised an eyebrow. Tracking, Quinn explained briefly about his search for his partner's killer. I've heard rumors that he might be working for the Caldwell Ranch now, but nothing concrete. The Caldwells hire all sorts of unsavory characters, Beatrice's mother remarked, especially when they need to intimidate someone off their land. Quinn's expression darkened. They've done that often. 3 families in the last year alone, Beatrice confirmed. Small homesteaders who couldn't fight back. A heavy silence fell over the room, broken finally by Quinn. I should be getting back to the ranch. Mr. Jenkins has us bringing in a new herd tomorrow. As he turned to leave, Beatrice followed him to the door. Will you come to town for the Founders' Day celebration next weekend? She asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Quinn smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. I believe I might, Miss Armstrong. Beatrice, she corrected him. My friends call me Beatrice. Beatrice, he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. Then I'm Quinn to my friends. After he left, Beatrice's mother gave her a knowing look. That man has his eye on you, daughter. Beatrice busied herself unpacking their supplies. He's just being kind. Men like that don't ride 5 miles just to carry a woman's packages out of kindness alone, her mother countered, and they certainly don't fix roofs in the pouring rain. Beatrice couldn't deny the flutter of hope in her chest, but she tempered it with caution. Even if that were true, what future could there be? He's searching for a killer and well, you know what people in town say about me. What people like Howard Caldwell say, her mother corrected sharply, and that boy hasn't earned the right to judge anyone. The week passed slowly as Beatrice found herself anticipating the Founders' Day celebration more than she had in years. The annual event commemorated the establishment of Silver Creek, and typically featured dancing, food, and games in the town square. In the past, Beatrice had attended only briefly, uncomfortable with the pitying glances from townspeople who remembered when her family had been respected members of the community. This year felt different, charged with possibility. She washed her best dress, a blue cotton that had once belonged to her mother, and spent precious time mending its worn spots and freshening the faded lace collar. The morning of the celebration dawned clear and warm. Beatrice helped her mother dress in her own carefully preserved outfit, a reminder of better days. "You look beautiful, Mother," Beatrice said truthfully, arranging the older woman's gray hair. "As do you," her mother replied, touching Beatrice's cheek. "Your father would be proud of the woman you've become." The mention of her father brought a lump to Beatrice's throat. "I wish he could see us now." "He can," her mother said with quiet certainty, "and I believe he's the one who sent Quinn Sullivan our way." Beatrice laughed softly. "That's quite a claim." "Is it?" Her mother's eyes were serious. "Your father always said God works in mysterious ways." They made their way slowly to the town square, where colorful bunting decorated the buildings and tables laden with food lined one side. Children ran laughing between stalls offering games and treats, while adults gathered in groups, discussing crops, cattle, and the ever-present hope for the mines to produce again. Beatrice helped her mother to a seat in the shade, then went to fetch them both a cup of lemonade. As she returned, she noticed Howard Caldwell and his friends watching her from across the square. Howard whispered something that made the others laugh, and Beatrice steeled herself for another confrontation. Instead, a ripple of interest passed through the crowd as a group of cowboys from the Double Bar Ranch rode into town. Quinn was among them, sitting tall on his chestnut horse, his usual plain clothes replaced by a clean shirt and vest. Their eyes met across the crowded square, and Beatrice felt her heart skip. Quinn tipped his hat slightly, the gesture meant only for her, before dismounting with his fellow ranch hands. Howard noticed the exchange and frowned, nudging his companions. Beatrice tried to ignore them, returning to her mother's side. "Your cowboy has arrived," her mother observed with a small smile. "He's not my cowboy," Beatrice protested, though she couldn't help watching as Quinn made his way through the crowd. Before he could reach them, however, Howard intercepted him, standing directly in his path with a falsely friendly smile. "Sullivan, isn't it?" Howard said loudly enough for nearby conversations to pause. "Working for old Jenkins now?" Quinn stopped, his posture relaxed but alert. "That's right." "Seems strange that a man rides into town looking for work and finds it so quickly," Howard continued, "especially when no one knows anything about him." "Mr. Jenkins knows what he needs to know," Quinn replied evenly, "and I don't recall owing you any explanations, Caldwell." Howard's smile hardened. "This is a small town. People here look out for each other." "Some people," Quinn corrected him. "Others seem more interested in bullying those who can't fight back." A tense silence fell over the immediate area. Howard's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, the mayor called for everyone's attention to officially begin the celebration. Howard backed away, pointing a finger at Quinn. "This isn't finished, cowboy." Quinn finally made his way to Beatrice and her mother, tipping his hat respectfully. "Mrs. Armstrong, you're looking well today." "Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Sullivan," she replied with good humor, "but I believe my daughter is the one you came to see." Beatrice felt her cheeks warm. "Mother," Quinn smiled, "perhaps I came to see you both." The tension with Howard temporarily forgotten, they enjoyed the festivities together. Quinn proved to be surprisingly good company, listening attentively to stories of Silver Creek's early days, and even coaxing Beatrice's mother into reminiscing about her courtship with Beatrice's father. As the afternoon progressed, a small band began playing and couples moved to a cleared area for dancing. Quinn turned to Beatrice. "Would you honor me with a dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Beatrice hesitated, aware of the eyes watching them. "I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," Quinn admitted, "but I'd like to try if you're willing." With a nod to her mother, who waved them on encouragingly, Beatrice placed her hand in Quinn's and allowed him to lead her to the dance area. His hand was warm and calloused against hers, a working man's hand that somehow made her feel safe rather than rough. As they joined the other dancers, Beatrice could hear the whispers start. That's the Armstrong girl, dancing with the new hand from Double Bar. Wonder what he sees in her. Probably doesn't know she hasn't got a penny to her name. Quinn must have heard too, for his jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his attention focused solely on Beatrice. Ignore them, he said quietly. They don't matter. Easy for you to say, Beatrice replied, though she tried to follow his advice. You don't have to live with their judgment every day. No, Quinn agreed, but I've faced my share of people who thought they knew me based on nothing more than appearances. As they moved together to the music, Beatrice gradually relaxed, finding Quinn to be a surprisingly good dancer despite his disclaimer. He guided her confidently through the steps, his hand respectfully placed at her waist. You said you weren't much of a dancer, she accused lightly. Quinn's eyes crinkled at the corners. I may have understated my abilities to make you more comfortable. Beatrice laughed, a genuine sound that drew more stares from onlookers who rarely saw her so carefree. That's very considerate, Mr. Sullivan. Quinn, he reminded her. Quinn, she amended, liking the way his name felt on her lips. The dance ended too soon, and they returned to where Beatrice's mother was chatting with Mrs. Ann from the general store. You two looked well together out there, Mrs. Ann commented approvingly. Before either could respond, a commotion erupted near the food tables. Howard and his friends, clearly having visited the Whiskey Barrel too often, were harassing one of the town's Mexican residents, a young man named Miguel who worked at the livery stable. These celebrations are for proper townspeople, Howard was saying loudly, blocking Miguel from accessing the food. Not stable boys who can barely speak English. Quinn's expression darkened as he watched the scene unfold. Excuse me, he said to Beatrice and the others, already moving toward the confrontation. Quinn, don't, Beatrice called after him, but he either didn't hear or chose to ignore her warning. As Quinn approached, Howard shoved Miguel, causing him to stumble backward. Without hesitation, Quinn stepped between them. That's enough, Caldwell, he said firmly. The man has as much right to be here as anyone, Howard sneered. Defending another nobody, Sullivan, first the Armstrong girl, now this stable hand, you've got strange priorities. And you've had too much to drink, Quinn replied evenly. Why don't you and your friends go cool off? Howard's hand moved toward his gun. Maybe you should mind your own business before you get hurt. The crowd around them quickly dispersed, parents grabbing children and pulling them to safety. Beatrice watched in horror as the festive atmosphere dissolved into tension. Sheriff Davis, a man more accustomed to breaking up minor disputes than dealing with serious trouble, pushed his way forward. Now, boys, this is supposed to be a celebration. Tell that to Sullivan, Howard spat. He's the one causing trouble. By stopping you from assaulting Miguel, Quinn countered. If that's causing trouble, then I'm guilty. The sheriff looked between them, clearly reluctant to confront Howard, whose family essentially owned the town. Mr. Caldwell, perhaps you and your friends should head over to the Rusty Nail for a while. Howard's face flushed with anger at being dismissed, but his father, Emmett Caldwell, had appeared at the edge of the crowd. A tall, imposing man with cold eyes, the elder Caldwell beckoned to his son. With a final glare at Quinn, Howard backed away. This isn't over, Sullivan, not by a long shot. As the tension dissipated, Quinn checked on Miguel before returning to Beatrice and her mother. Beatrice noticed he was careful to keep his right hand free, ready to draw if needed. Are you all right? She asked, concerned by the hard set of his jaw. I'm fine, Quinn assured her, though his eyes remained vigilant. But I think it might be best if I escorted you and your mother home now. Mrs. Armstrong nodded her agreement. That seems wise. Celebrations have a way of turning sour when liquor flows too freely. As they made their way back to the cabin, Beatrice couldn't help but worry about the enmity between Quinn and Howard. The Caldwells were not known for forgetting slights, and Howard had been publicly humiliated twice now. You shouldn't have confronted him, she said quietly as they walked. The Caldwells are dangerous enemies to make. Quinn's expression remained resolute. Some things are worth standing up for, Beatrice. The way Howard treats people like you and Miguel, it's not right. Right doesn't always win in Silver Creek, she replied sadly. Maybe it's time that changed, Quinn suggested. His gaze meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. At the cabin, Quinn insisted on checking the perimeter before leaving them for the night. As he prepared to depart, he hesitated at the door. I enjoyed today, he said simply. Despite the interruption, Beatrice smiled. So did I. I'd like to call on you properly if that would be acceptable, Quinn continued, his usual confidence giving way to a hint of uncertainty. Beatrice's heart leapt, but doubt quickly followed. Quinn, you should know that what Howard said about me about being poor, it's true. After my father died, we lost everything. I work for Mrs. Ann just to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. Quinn's expression softened. Do you think that matters to me? It should, Beatrice insisted. I have nothing to offer except more trouble with the Caldwells. You're wrong, Quinn said firmly. You have kindness, courage, and dignity despite everything you've faced. That's worth more than all the Caldwell money combined. Before Beatrice could respond, Quinn leaned forward and gently kissed her cheek. Think about what I said. I'll come by tomorrow if you'll allow it. After he left, Beatrice touched her cheek where his lips had brushed her skin, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the summer evening. Well, her mother said from where she'd been watching, I believe that settles the question of whether he's interested in you. Beatrice couldn't suppress her smile, though concern still lingered. It doesn't settle the question of whether it's wise, her mother sighed. Wisdom and love rarely travel the same path, my girl, but sometimes the heart knows better than the head. The following day, Quinn appeared as promised, this time bearing a small bouquet of wildflowers and a package wrapped in brown paper. For your mother, he explained, handing Beatrice the package. Medicine from the doctor in the next town over. Jenkins sent me there for supplies, and I thought it might help. Beatrice stared at him in disbelief. Quinn, you can't keep doing this. We can't repay you. I'm not asking for repayment, he replied simply. And before you protest about charity, consider it a gift between friends. Their friendship deepened over the following weeks as Quinn made regular visits to town, always finding time to stop at the Armstrong cabin. He fixed loose boards, reinforced windows, and even managed to repair the old stove that had been temperamental for years. During these visits, Quinn and Beatrice gradually shared more of their lives with each other. She learned that he had grown up on a small ranch in Texas, that his mother had died when he was young, and that his father had taught him everything from roping cattle to reading Shakespeare. Shakespeare? Beatrice had asked incredulously. On a Texas ranch, Quinn smiled at the memory. My father believed education mattered more than location, said a man should be able to quote the bard and brand a calf with equal skill. In turn, Beatrice told him about her own childhood in Silver Creek when the mines were still producing, and her father had been a respected foreman. She shared stories of school days, of dreams to become a teacher that had died with her father, and of her determination to care for her mother despite their reduced circumstances. One evening, as they sat on the cabin's small porch watching the sunset, Quinn finally spoke of his partner's death. His name was Thomas Fletcher, Quinn said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. We'd been working together for 3 years, moving cattle across the territories. He was like a brother to me. What happened? Beatrice asked gently. We were camped near the Wyoming border when a man rode into our camp asking for help, said his horse had gone lame a few miles back. Quinn's eyes darkened with the memory. Thomas always wanted to help everyone. He went with the stranger while I stayed with the herd. Quinn paused, his hands clenching into fists. When Thomas didn't return by morning, I went looking, found him shot in the back, his horse and gear stolen. The stranger had vanished. I'm so sorry, Beatrice whispered, placing her hand over his. I tracked the killer for months, Quinn continued. His trail led me here to Silver Creek, but then nothing. It's like he disappeared. And you still believe he's working for the Caldwells? Quinn nodded slowly. There have been rumors about a new man at their ranch who matches the description, a man with a distinctive scar across his neck. Have you seen him? Not yet. The Caldwell Ranch is like a fortress. They don't welcome visitors, especially now that Howard has marked me as an enemy. Beatrice squeezed his hand. What will you do if you find him? Quinn's expression was unreadable in the fading light. I've asked myself that question every day for months. I came looking for justice, not revenge, but sometimes the line between them blurs. Justice shouldn't require more bloodshed, Beatrice said softly. Quinn turned to face her, his eyes searching hers. What would you have me do? Let Thomas's killer go free? No, she admitted, but I don't want to see you become something you're not because of him. Quinn was silent for a long moment. I can't promise what I'll do when I find him, he finally said, but I can promise to remember your words when the time comes. As summer gave way to autumn, Quinn became a regular sight in Silver Creek, respected by many for his work ethic and fairness, though the Caldwells and their associates maintained their hostility. Howard made a point of leaving any establishment Quinn entered, his resentment apparently outweighing his desire for confrontation. Beatrice found herself looking forward to Quinn's visits with an intensity that both thrilled and frightened her. She had never expected to find love in Silver Creek, especially not with a man like Quinn Sullivan, handsome, capable, and surprisingly thoughtful. For his part, Quinn made no secret of his feelings. He courted her openly, ignoring the whispers and occasionally outright hostility from those who felt a poor woman like Beatrice didn't deserve attention from a man who had proven himself valuable even to the demanding Mr. Jenkins. "People are talking," Beatrice said one Sunday afternoon as they walked back from church. "They say you could do better than a penniless miner's daughter." Quinn stopped walking, turning to face her. "And what do you say?" Beatrice hesitated, vulnerable in her honesty. "I say they might be right." "Then they're as foolish as they are cruel," Quinn replied firmly. "Beatrice, when I look at you, I don't see a poor woman or a miner's daughter. I see the most courageous, compassionate person I've ever known." He took her hands in his expression earnest. "I've spent years moving from place to place, never staying long enough to put down roots, but being with you, it makes me want to stay." Beatrice's heart pounded as she recognized the declaration for what it was. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Quinn instinctively moved Beatrice behind him as Howard Caldwell and 3 ranch hands rode up, blocking the road. "Well, isn't this touching?" Howard sneered, clearly intoxicated despite the early hour. "The drifter and the pauper out for a Sunday stroll." Quinn's posture shifted subtly, ready for trouble. "We don't want any problems, Caldwell." "Too late for that," Howard replied, dismounting unsteadily. "You've been a problem since you rode into town, sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, turning people against my family." "No one's turning anyone against your family," Quinn said evenly. "Your actions speak for themselves." Howard's face darkened with rage. "You think you're better than me, a nobody cowhand judging the Caldwells," he gestured to his companions. "Get him." 2 of the men dismounted, moving toward Quinn with obvious intent to harm. Beatrice gasped as Quinn gently but firmly pushed her further back. "Run to town," he instructed quietly. "Get the sheriff." "I won't leave you," she protested. Before Quinn could insist, one of the ranch hands lunged at him. Quinn sidestepped the attack with surprising agility, delivering a precise blow that sent the man stumbling backward. The second attacker was more cautious, circling Quinn warily. Howard watched with drunken anticipation while the third man remained mounted, his hand resting on a rifle secured to his saddle. "Last chance to walk away, Caldwell," Quinn warned, his attention divided between his immediate opponents. Howard laughed. "You're outnumbered, Sullivan. And this time, there's no audience to impress." The second man rushed Quinn, who met the charge with controlled force. Beatrice watched in horrified fascination as Quinn fought with a skill that spoke of experience beyond ranch work. His movements were economical and precise, never wasting energy on flourishes. Within minutes, both attackers were on the ground, one clutching a bloodied nose, the other trying to catch his breath after a punishing blow to the stomach. Howard's smirk had vanished, replaced by genuine anger. He drew his pistol, pointing it directly at Quinn. "Not so confident now, are you?" "Howard, don't," Beatrice cried, stepping forward. The mounted man suddenly tensed, looking down the road toward town. "Riders coming," he warned. Howard hesitated, glancing in that direction. Sure enough, a group of horsemen were approaching rapidly. Quinn's fellow hands from the double bar, led by Mr. Jenkins himself. Faced with more balanced odds, Howard lowered his weapon reluctantly. "This isn't over, Sullivan, not by a long shot." He turned his venom toward Beatrice. "And you're nothing but a burden on this town. Your kind should have left when the mines dried up." Quinn's expression hardened dangerously. "That's enough, Caldwell." Howard sneered as he remounted his horse. "What do you see in her anyway? She's too poor to matter to anyone with sense." Quinn's response was immediate and firm, loud enough for all to hear. "Then she matters most of all." The simple declaration hung in the air as Howard and his men retreated, passing the approaching double-bar riders with mutual glares but no further confrontation. Mr. Jenkins pulled up beside Quinn and Beatrice. "You two all right? We were heading into town when we saw the trouble." Quinn nodded, his eyes still on the retreating Caldwell party. "Thanks to your timing, yes." Jenkins, a weathered man in his 60s with a reputation for fairness, looked between Quinn and Beatrice with knowing eyes. "The Caldwell boy's been drinking heavily lately. His father's worried about him." "Worried enough to rein him in?" Quinn asked skeptically. Jenkins shrugged. "Emmett Caldwell loves his son but doesn't always see his faults clearly." He turned to Beatrice with unexpected gentleness. "Miss Armstrong, would you like an escort back to town?" Beatrice, still shaken by the confrontation, nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins." As they rode towards Silver Creek, Beatrice on Quinn's horse with him walking beside her, she couldn't forget his words to Howard. "Then she matters most of all." The simple declaration had touched something deep within her, a place starved for validation after years of struggling just to survive. Back in town, news of the confrontation spread quickly. Mrs. Ann closed the general store early to check on Beatrice, bringing soup and fresh bread for her and her mother. "That Howard Caldwell has always been trouble," Mrs. Ann declared as she set the food on their small table. "But drawing a gun on Quinn in broad daylight, that's a new low even for him." Beatrice's mother watched her daughter with concerned eyes. "This situation is becoming dangerous, Beatrice." "It was already dangerous," Beatrice replied quietly. "I just didn't want to see it." Later that evening, after Mrs. Ann had left and her mother had retired to bed, Quinn returned to the cabin. His expression was grave as Beatrice let him in. "I need to tell you something," he said without preamble. "One of the hands at Double Bar confirmed it today. The man I've been tracking, Thomas's killer, he is working for the Caldwells." Beatrice felt her stomach drop. "Are you certain?" Quinn nodded grimly. "His name is Samuel Reed now, but the description matches perfectly. The scar across his neck, the missing finger on his left hand, it's him." "What will you do?" Quinn ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "I need to think. If I confront him at the Caldwell Ranch, it could mean a war between Jenkins and Emmett Caldwell. And more people could get hurt," Beatrice finished for him. "Yes," Quinn's eyes met hers. "But I can't let him go unpunished. I owe Thomas that much." Beatrice stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "Quinn, please be careful. The Caldwells are powerful enemies." "I know." He covered her hands with his own. "But some things are worth fighting for no matter the cost." The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "What things?" "Justice," he said softly. "Honor, love." The last word hung between them, charged with meaning. Beatrice felt her heart racing as Quinn leaned down, his intention clear. This time, there was no interruption as his lips met hers in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened with shared longing. When they finally parted, Beatrice rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not just of the Caldwells, but of feeling this way, of wanting something I might not be able to keep." Quinn tilted her chin up, his expression serious. "I can't promise you there won't be dangers ahead, but I can promise that what I feel for you is real and lasting." "Even though I'm just a poor miner's daughter?" she asked, voicing the doubt that still lingered. "Especially because you're you," Quinn replied firmly. "Your worth has never been about what you own, Beatrice. It's about who you are." In the days that followed, tension in Silver Creek escalated. Word spread about Quinn's search for Thomas's killer, dividing the town between those who sympathized with his quest for justice and those who feared antagonizing the Caldwell family. Quinn maintained his work at the Double Bar, but Jenkins assigned him to duties closer to the ranch house, away from potential confrontations with Caldwell men. Beatrice continued her work at the general store, enduring increased whispers and occasional outright hostility from Howard's supporters. The situation came to a head one rainy afternoon when Beatrice was returning home alone. A wagon blocked the narrow road near her cabin, and as she approached, Samuel Reed stepped out from behind it. Beatrice recognized him immediately from Quinn's description: tall and lean with a jagged scar across his throat and a missing finger on his left hand. His eyes were cold as he assessed her. "Miss Armstrong," he said, his voice raspy. "I believe you and I need to have a conversation about your friend Sullivan." Beatrice took a step back, her heart pounding. "I have nothing to say to you." Reed's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, but I think you do. You see, Sullivan's been asking questions about me. Stirring up trouble that Mr. Caldwell doesn't appreciate." "That's between you and Quinn," Beatrice replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. "It became about you the moment Sullivan started courting you," Reed countered, taking a step closer. "I'm here to deliver a message. Tell Sullivan to leave Silver Creek and forget what happened to his partner, or the next funeral in town will be yours." Before Beatrice could respond, the cabin door opened and her mother appeared, a shotgun in her trembling hands. "Step away from my daughter," she commanded, her illness momentarily forgotten in the face of threat. Reed glanced at the weapon, clearly calculating his options. "Mrs. Armstrong, I didn't realize you were home." "Clearly," she replied coldly. "Now take your threats elsewhere before I decide Silver Creek would be better off without you." For a tense moment, Reed seemed to consider challenging her, but the steady way she held the shotgun despite her frailty gave him pause. With a final warning look at Beatrice, he returned to his wagon and drove away. Once he was out of sight, Beatrice's mother sagged against the doorframe, the shotgun suddenly too heavy for her weakened arms. Beatrice rushed to her side, guiding her back inside. "Where did you get that?" Beatrice asked, taking the weapon and setting it aside. "It was your father's," her mother explained, settling into her chair with obvious exhaustion. "I've kept it under the bed all these years, never thought I'd need to use it." Beatrice knelt beside her, concerned by her pallor. "You shouldn't have confronted him, it was too dangerous." Her mother's eyes flashed with remnants of her former strength. "I may be dying, Beatrice, but I'll be damned if I let that man threaten my daughter while I still draw breath." The encounter left them both shaken. When Quinn arrived later that evening and heard what had happened, his face darkened with anger and guilt. "This is my fault," he said, pacing the small cabin. "I should never have involved you in this." "You didn't involve me," Beatrice countered. "Howard Caldwell did that when he decided to make me a target for his cruelty." Quinn stopped pacing, his expression troubled. "Reed won't stop with threats. He's a killer, Beatrice. I can't risk him hurting you or your mother." "So what will you do? Leave Silver Creek as he demanded?" "No," Quinn said firmly, "but I need to end this one way or another." The next morning, Quinn rode to the sheriff's office, determined to bring official attention to Reed's threats and history. Sheriff Davis listened to his account with increasing discomfort. "These are serious accusations, Sullivan," the sheriff said when Quinn had finished. "You're claiming this man murdered your partner in Wyoming, stole his identity, and is now threatening Miss Armstrong?" "Yes," Quinn confirmed. "And I have witnesses to the threats, including Mrs. Armstrong herself." The sheriff rubbed his mustache nervously. "You understand that Reed works for Emmett Caldwell, the same Emmett Caldwell who pays most of my salary," Quinn's jaw tightened. "I understand that you're sworn to uphold the law regardless of who pays your salary." "That's easy for you to say," Davis retorted. "You can ride out of town anytime. The rest of us have to live here under Caldwell rule." "So you won't help?" Quinn asked, though he'd expected this response. The sheriff sighed heavily. "I didn't say that. I'll speak to Reed about the threats against Miss Armstrong. That's all I can promise for now." It wasn't enough, but Quinn recognized it was the best he could hope for from the intimidated lawman. As he left the sheriff's office, he noticed Howard Caldwell watching from across the street, a satisfied smirk on his face. Quinn returned to the double bar to find Mr. Jenkins waiting for him with grave news. "Emmett Caldwell sent a messenger," Jenkins said without preamble. "He's demanding I fire you or he'll cut off our water access where it crosses his property." Quinn's stomach sank. The double bar relied on that water for both cattle and crops. Without it, the ranch would struggle to survive. "I can't let you lose your livelihood because of me," Quinn said. Jenkins studied him thoughtfully. "You're a good worker, Sullivan, one of the best I've had, but this vendetta between you and the Caldwells is becoming a problem for everyone in Silver Creek." "It's not a vendetta," Quinn corrected him. "Reed murdered my partner, that's a fact, not a grudge." "Maybe so," Jenkins conceded. "But the way forward isn't clear. If I keep you on, I risk the entire ranch. If I let you go, I'm bowing to Caldwell tyranny." In the end, they reached a compromise. Quinn would take a leave of absence from the ranch, giving Jenkins plausible deniability with Caldwell while allowing Quinn time to resolve the situation with Reed. That evening, Quinn rode to the Armstrong cabin with a heavy heart. He found Beatrice alone on the porch, watching the sunset with troubled eyes. "Your mother?" he asked as he sat beside her. "Resting," Beatrice replied. "The excitement yesterday took a toll on her." Quinn nodded, guilt adding to his burden. "Jenkins gave me a leave of absence today. Caldwell threatened his water rights if he kept me on." Beatrice turned to him, alarmed. "What will you do?" "What I should have done weeks ago," Quinn said resolutely. "Confront Reed directly and end this." "That's suicide," Beatrice protested. "You can't just ride onto Caldwell property and challenge him." "I don't plan to," Quinn assured her. "But Reed comes into town every Saturday night for cards at the Rusty Nail. I'll face him there with witnesses." Beatrice grasped his arm. "Quinn, please, there has to be another way." "If there is, I haven't found it," he replied gently. "This has gone beyond just Thomas now. Reed threatened you. I can't let that stand." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "And what about us? What happens to us if you get yourself killed?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications about a shared future neither had openly discussed until now. Quinn took her hands in his. "Beatrice Armstrong, from the moment I saw you scrubbing that porch and refusing to be cowed by Howard Caldwell, I knew you were someone special. These past months have only confirmed what my heart recognized immediately." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a simple silver ring. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to me before he died, said I should save it for a woman who was worth everything, not just something." Beatrice stared at the ring, her breath catching. "Quinn, I'm not asking for an answer now," he said quickly. "That wouldn't be fair with everything that's happening, but I want you to hold this for me, as a promise that I intend to come back and ask properly." Tears spilled onto Beatrice's cheeks as she closed her hand around the ring. "Then you'd better come back, Quinn Sullivan, because my answer is already waiting for you." The next evening, Saturday, found Quinn seated at a corner table in the Rusty Nail saloon, nursing a whiskey as he waited for Reed to make his usual appearance. The saloon was crowded with cowboys, miners, and townspeople seeking relief from the week's labors. Beatrice had wanted to be there, but Quinn had insisted she stay home with her mother. This confrontation would be dangerous enough without worrying about her safety as well. Around 9 o'clock, Reed entered the saloon flanked by two other Caldwell hands. He spotted Quinn immediately, a slow smile spreading across his scarred face as he recognized the trap had been sprung in reverse. Reed whispered something to his companions, who moved to block the saloon's main exit. He then approached Quinn's table with exaggerated casualness. "Sullivan," he greeted as if they were old acquaintances. "Heard you've been looking for me." Quinn set down his glass carefully. "Samuel Reed, or whatever your real name is." Reed's smile widened. "Does it matter? Names are just words. Like the words you spoke to Miss Armstrong yesterday." Quinn countered, his voice level despite the anger burning inside him. "Threats against an innocent woman don't sit well with me. Neither does a man who can't let go of the past," Reed replied, signaling the bartender for a drink. "Your partner died months ago in Wyoming." "A tragedy, certainly, but nothing to do with Silver Creek." Quinn's eyes never left Reed's face. "We both know that's a lie. You killed Thomas Fletcher, stole his horse and gear, and left him to rot." Reed accepted his whiskey from a nervous barmaid, seemingly unconcerned by the accusation. "Bold claims from a man with no proof." "I have proof," Quinn said quietly. "Thomas's pocket watch, the one his father gave him that he never would have parted with willingly, the one you sold in Cheyenne a week after he died." For the first time, Reed's confidence faltered slightly. "Many men own pocket watches. Not with the inscription to Thomas, 'Follow your true north, father.'" Quinn leaned forward. "The watchmaker remembered it clearly. Remembered you too, especially that distinctive scar." The saloon had grown quiet as patrons became aware of the tense conversation. Reed glanced around, noting the many witnesses to Quinn's accusations. "What do you want, Sullivan?" he asked, his voice hardening. "Money, revenge, justice," Quinn replied simply. "Come with me to the sheriff, confess what you did, face a proper trial." Reed laughed, a harsh sound in the silent saloon. "That's not going to happen." "Then I'll take you myself," Quinn said, rising slowly from his chair. Reed's hand moved toward his gun. "I don't think so." Before either man could draw, the saloon doors burst open. Sheriff Davis entered, followed by an imposing figure that commanded immediate attention, Emmett Caldwell himself. "What's going on here?" Caldwell demanded, his authoritative voice cutting through the tension. Reed immediately adopted a respectful demeanor. "Nothing, Mr. Caldwell. Just a disagreement with Sullivan here." Emmett Caldwell studied the scene with shrewd eyes that had built an empire through calculation and force when necessary. Unlike his son, the elder Caldwell was not known for impulsive actions or unnecessary cruelty. "Sullivan," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "I understand you've been making accusations against my employee." Quinn met the rancher's gaze steadily. "Not accusations, facts. Reed murdered my partner in Wyoming. I have witnesses who can place him there and identify stolen property he sold afterward." "Lies," Reed hissed. "He has nothing." Sheriff Davis cleared his throat nervously. "Actually, I received a telegram today from the sheriff in Cheyenne. Seems Sullivan's story about the watch checks out." A murmur ran through the saloon as Reed's confidence visibly crumbled. Emmett Caldwell's expression remained impassive, but his eyes hardened as he turned to his employee. "Is this true, Reed?" he asked quietly. Reed's gaze darted between Caldwell, Quinn, and the exit still blocked by the other ranch hands who now looked uncertain. "It was self-defense," he claimed desperately. "Fletcher attacked me first." "Shot in the back doesn't sound like self-defense," Quinn countered, his control slipping. Caldwell raised a hand, silencing them both. "I've built my ranch on many things, some of which might not bear close scrutiny, but I don't employ murderers who kill innocent men and threaten women." He turned to the sheriff. "Davis, I believe you have a duty to perform." Reed's face contorted with rage as he realized his protection had vanished. With a sudden movement, he drew his gun, aiming not at Quinn but at Emmett Caldwell. "You self-righteous bastard," he snarled. "After everything I've done for you," Quinn moved instinctively, lunging toward Reed as the gun fired. Pain exploded in his shoulder as he collided with Reed, knocking the weapon aside. The bullet meant for Caldwell shattered a bottle behind the bar. Chaos erupted in the saloon as patrons dived for cover. Quinn grappled with Reed despite his wounded shoulder, determined not to let him escape. They crashed into tables and chairs, each fighting for control of Reed's gun. Sheriff Davis was shouting for order, his own weapon drawn but useless in the close-quarters struggle. One of the Caldwell hands finally intervened, striking Reed from behind with a bottle. The killer slumped, momentarily stunned. Quinn staggered back, blood soaking his shirt from the bullet wound. As Reed started to recover, Sheriff Davis finally moved in, securing him with handcuffs. "Samuel Reed, you're under arrest for the murder of Thomas Fletcher and the attempted murder of Emmett Caldwell," the sheriff declared with newfound authority. Reed spat on the floor, his eyes finding Quinn with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Sullivan." "Yes," Quinn replied, wincing as someone pressed a cloth against his bleeding shoulder. "It is." The next few hours passed in a blur of pain and activity. The town doctor removed the bullet from Quinn's shoulder and declared him lucky the wound was painful but not life-threatening. Sheriff Davis secured Reed in the jail, posting deputies to ensure he remained there until he could be transported to Wyoming for trial. To everyone's surprise, Emmett Caldwell himself came to check on Quinn as the doctor finished bandaging his wound. "Sullivan," the rancher acknowledged, removing his hat as he entered the doctor's office. "It seems I owe you my life." Quinn attempted to sit up straighter, grimacing at the pain. "I wasn't aiming to save you specifically, Mr. Caldwell, just to stop a killer." Caldwell's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "Nevertheless, the bullet was meant for me and found you instead. That creates a debt." "If you want to repay any debt," Quinn replied, "you could start by reining in your son. Howard's behavior toward Beatrice Armstrong and others in town needs to stop." The older man's expression sobered. "My son has always been passionate. But you're right, he's crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. I'll speak with him." Quinn nodded, too tired to press further. Caldwell turned to leave but paused at the door. "Jenkins tells me you're a good hand. When you've recovered, your position at the double bar will be waiting." "I won't interfere again." It was as close to an apology as the proud rancher was likely to offer. Quinn accepted it with a simple nod. After Caldwell departed, Quinn insisted on being taken to the Armstrong cabin despite the doctor's protests that he should rest. He needed to see Beatrice, to let her know that the danger had passed. Word traveled quickly in Silver Creek. By the time Quinn arrived at the cabin, supported by one of the double-bar hands, Beatrice was already waiting anxiously on the porch. Her face paled at the sight of his bandaged shoulder and blood-stained shirt. "Quinn," she cried, rushing to his side. "What happened?" "They said there was shooting at the saloon. Reed's been arrested," Quinn assured her, allowing her to help him inside. "It's over, Beatrice, truly over." As Quinn settled into a chair, Beatrice's mother emerged from her bedroom, moving with more strength than she had shown in weeks. She took in Quinn's condition with a knowing eye. "Shot, were you?" she asked matter-of-factly. Quinn managed a smile, "Just a graze." "A bullet through the shoulder is hardly a graze," Beatrice corrected, her relief giving way to concern as she examined his pallor. "You should be in bed, not here." "I needed to see you," Quinn said simply, "to make sure you knew you were safe now." Beatrice's expression softened as she knelt beside his chair. "And to make sure I was still holding something for you," Quinn's heart leapt as she opened her hand, revealing his mother's ring. "That too," he admitted. Beatrice's mother cleared her throat. "I believe I'll make some tea," she announced, retreating to the kitchen with a knowing smile. Alone with Beatrice, Quinn took her hand in his. "I know this isn't the proper way to do this. I'm not exactly on one knee and I'm hardly at my best. When have we ever done anything the proper way?" Beatrice countered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Quinn smiled, squeezing her hand. "Beatrice Armstrong, these past months have shown me what I want for the rest of my life, a home, a purpose, and you by my side through all of it. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Beatrice answered without hesitation. "Yes, Quinn Sullivan, I will marry you." The simple silver ring fit her finger perfectly, as if it had been made for her all along. As Quinn kissed her, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him since Thomas's death. Justice had been served, but more importantly, he had found a new beginning with a woman whose worth could never be measured in dollars or status. Silver Creek witnessed many changes in the months that followed. Samuel Reed was transported to Wyoming, where he stood trial and was convicted for Thomas Fletcher's murder. Howard Caldwell, chastened by his father's intervention and the town's shifting opinion, ceased his harassment of those he had previously targeted. Quinn's shoulder healed, and he returned to work at the Double Bar, eventually becoming Jenkins's foreman when the older man decided to retire. With his first substantial wages, Quinn purchased a small plot of land on the outskirts of town land that Emmett Caldwell surprisingly sold to him at a fair price, perhaps in continued payment of his perceived debt. Beatrice's mother lived to see them married in a simple ceremony at the town church, her face alight with joy as she watched her daughter begin a new chapter. When she passed peacefully in her sleep 3 months later, the entire town turned out for her funeral, including the Caldwells, a sign of the changing times in Silver Creek. On the first anniversary of their meeting, Quinn and Beatrice stood on the porch of their new home, a sturdy cabin built with Quinn's own hands on their small piece of land. Inside, plans for expansion were already laid out on the table, anticipating the family they hoped to create together. "Happy?" Quinn asked, his arm around his wife's waist as they watched the sunset paint the distant mountains gold. Beatrice leaned into his embrace. "More than I ever thought possible." "Do you ever think about what Howard said that day?" Quinn asked quietly, "about you being too poor to matter?" Beatrice considered the question. "Sometimes, not because I believe it anymore, but because it reminds me of your answer," Quinn smiled, remembering, "that you matter most of all." "It was the moment I began to fall in love with you," Beatrice admitted. "Not just because you defended me, but because you saw value where others saw only lack." Quinn turned her to face him, his expression serious. "Every day since then has only confirmed what I knew in that moment, that true worth isn't found in bank accounts or land deeds. Where is it found?" Beatrice asked, though she already knew his answer. Quinn's hand gently touched her cheek. "In courage that faces each day despite hardship, in kindness that persists when it would be easier to grow bitter, in love that transforms both the one who gives it and the one who receives it." As the last light faded from the sky, they remained on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, a testament to love that recognized value beyond material wealth, and a future built on the foundation of seeing worth where others saw none. The legacy of Quinn and Beatrice Sullivan would eventually extend beyond their own lifetime. Their children and grandchildren would grow up hearing the story of how their family began with a chance meeting outside a general store, a defense against cruelty, and the profound truth that those deemed worthless by society's standards often matter most of all. In time, Silver Creek would recover from its mining bust, finding new prosperity in cattle and eventually tourism. The Sullivan Ranch would grow modestly but steadily, never rivaling the Caldwell Empire in size but earning respect throughout the territory for its fair practices and quality stock. And in the town records, preserved for generations to come, the simple account of their marriage would remain Quinn Sullivan and Beatrice Armstrong, united not by wealth or station, but by a love that recognized true value when society had forgotten how to count what really mattered.